So can, great.
All right. Hello, everybody. My name is Hector. I am here with Francois, Gregory, and Ronak, and we will be talking about how global warming has affected our various cities. So one of the main things we concentrated on is because all of our cities span the entire globe, is how differently global warming and climate change has affected our different parts around the world. It's very interesting how our individual cities have taken different approaches based on the magnitude that their economy, their climate, their socioeconomic status has been affected by climate change. And in seeing all of our cities, hopefully we will be able to share some of the insight that we have and some of the discussion we've made around how both private and public actors work to combat it.
Hi, everyone. So I am Ronak, and I'll be telling about my city, Greater Noida, that how we have been working about the global warming and stuff. So the government has put, especially the NGT, has put a halt on concretization of roadsides. As we all know, concretization causes groundwater recharge, which causes urban heat islands, loss of biodiversity, and water logging with air pollution and things. So they have put a halt on it. And it is important to have trees and plants by the side of the roads. So it's a very major step took by the government of Greater Noida. Can we go to the next slide? Then sustainable green building projects. So most of the projects in Greater Noida, the flats and the buildings which are being made are now going towards the green concept. The buildings are green concept, which is they are good for the they're good for the society and the environment. So it is also a major step because it helps these buildings will reduce the negative impacts on our ecological and natural resources. So yeah, it's also being done. Then for the EV thing, so in India there are very less charging stations because of which people do not prefer taking the electric cars. But in Greater Noida, it has been started like they are putting charging stations very closer, as in there used to be none of them, but now they're like 5 to 10 charging stations, and they're adding them more, which will result in a very good effect as the fossil fuel driven internal combustion will come to an end, and there would be less global warming with this. So I guess that's about it.
Yeah. So my name is Hector again. I am going to be representing the US, but specifically the city of Sacramento because it is such a special case. My father worked in landscaping and still has a landscaping business for over 20 years. So, you know, lawn and lawn maintenance and landscaping is something that's very important in our family. The city of Sacramento in itself prides itself over having various measures which encourage local communities and businesses to promote sustainability and be more environmentally conscious. So for example, in 2011, the city of Sacramento introduced its river-friendly landscape program, which includes a $3,000 rebate for the installation of drought-tolerant landscaping and an $800 rebate for the upgrading of irrigation systems, such as drip irrigating and replacing the standard antiquated fixed spray sprinklers, which is a huge waste of water. The reason California has such an intense culture around it, specifically around the maintenance of lawns and other greeneries, is because as of recent years, there's been quite a number of record-breaking droughts and fires all across California, which is really impacting the wildlife and quality of life there. So measures like this that the city of Sacramento takes have been a result of that and have been really something that encourages the locals, single person to really undertake these projects to promote, you know, sustainability and environmental consciousness. Additionally, you know, Sacramento has a reputation for being the city of trees because it has been the proud home of over 100,000 public trees and more than 200 parks and parkways. If you look down at the bottom right corner here, this is the capital of Sacramento and of California, where the governor is. As you can see, it's a very lush, huge garden which has been kind of the testament to the 20-year plan the city has implemented, which kind of highlights how it's going to really try to turn this concept of urban forest on its head and implement it all over the city. So that way, in larger industrial areas like downtown Sacramento, there's still an overwhelming presence of greenery, which is overall better for the environment and makes it more suitable for people to move in and be more luscious. Finally, one major thing that California has done in general, and not just Sacramento, is that in 2016, it put in Proposition 67, which initiated the statewide single-use carry-out bag ban. While it seems small, living during this time period and having that plastic ban happen was something that really fundamentally changed the way that Californians view grocery shopping and, commerce. I think this small thing has had such a huge impact on a lot of the businesses and people's impressions of, environmental consciousness and making sure that they are using reusable bags. This sort of thing is kind of unique in a certain sense, because the United States functions on like a federal-based system where each one is able to really, enact their own sort of codes and policies. So this being said, I don't know if this kind of measure would be possible in a bigger country such as India, because it is so like diverse and so different. But it is just a small thing that California has done, which has made a huge impact, protecting the ban on plastic bags.
All right, so I'm going to talk a little bit more about my portion. So currently I am a language teaching assistant in 100% sur Sioule in France. So I'm going to talk about my town and so what we do to counteract global warming in the town. So one of the things that I covered was the small business sustainability model. So an example of what we do in our town is with a bakery, the local bakery called Le Cygne. And so one of the things that this bakery does in order to fight against global warming and do their part is to use local ingredients so that they prevent importing goods from other places that are a little bit further out, that are not local to the region that I currently live in or that the bakery is based in. So some of these examples include butter from Deré, salmon from Suchon, yogurt from Petit Franchaise, and flour from Landru, and ham from Distréport. So these are just all places, these are all companies that are pretty much local to within and around the region that this bakery is located in. So, okay, so another thing that the bakery does is in order to prevent additional waste by individuals or customers or clients, what they do is the bakery, Les Cygne, they give out loyalty cards. And so these are cards that basically when customers come in, if they keep their wrappings or their packagings so that when they buy bread for a second or third time, they reuse them. A loyalty card is stamped so that by the time that they receive 10 stamps, they're able to get a discount on pastries or a free pastry, or they get incentives for getting up to 10 stamps for whenever they come in and save their packaging for the next purchase that they have. And so that's pretty much what this bakery does in order to fight against global warming. Let's take a look at what the actual town itself does. In the town of 100% sur Sioule, what the municipality does is they try to practice sustainable recycling. So one of the things is that recycling glass, paper, and boxes can be done around 7 locations within around town. 100% is a town of about 9,000 inhabitants. So the fact that there are 7 locations within the town is pretty accessible for all inhabitants to be able to practice and pitch in to make sure that they are practicing sustainable recycling. Another thing is that plastic, cardboard, metal, and paper recyclable sorting is available pretty much everywhere within the town. And lastly, free services are also provided to residents to dispose vegetable waste, scrap metal, bulky items, used oil, and batteries. And a lot of the times within these households, a lot of these things can be used. So it is very convenient for the inhabitants of the town to be able to just dispose of them pretty easily. And it's just a way for there to be more access for everyone to be able to pitch in. So let's take a look at the actual management company that makes sure that that manages the household waste within the region, the Allier region. Allier is the region that 100% is in, and the company that manages all the waste is called SICTOM, and that was created in 1978. What SICTOM does is every year a review occurs to make sure that to determine the cost for each of the household waste for household waste, and it's just a way to reduce the amount of waste, and that way it can help incentivize lowering overhead costs for the company itself. SICTOM created a local waste prevention program in around 2011 to make sure that they could reduce household waste by 7%. This includes waste, paper, packaging, and glass. And by 2016, this percentage was reduced to 11%. Okay, so lastly, if we take a look, and another example of what the town itself does is that every year they have a river cleanup. So in 100%, we live close to a river. And so within 4 days, there is priority for 4 different categories in order to clean up the river. So that includes composting, which is day 1. Day 2 is biodegradable waste. Day 3 is plastic pollutants, and day 4 is pesticides and mulch. And so the overall goal of this outreach is to make sure that the Sioule River, which is where 100% is located by, stays clean for future generations.
Hello, I'm François, and so I'm going to talk about Salzburg now, as I'm living in Austria. So in general, in Austria, all over the country, people are quite aware of global warming, and especially about preservation of the nature, as Austria is a small country that is located right in the middle of the Alps. And so people know the nature very well, and they are surrounded by it, and so they are more aware of the preservation of the nature because they are close from it than because of the actual problems of nowadays. And so people from far have a strong connection to the nature, and they tend to care about it, even though you have a lot of cases in Austria, and especially in Salzburgerland or in the Tyrol, where mass tourism, especially in winter, regarding the ski tourism, for example, is a huge threat toward the nature and toward their nature, meaning the mountains. And yeah, so in Austria, people are extremely aware of this problem to some extent. Now, regarding only Salzburgerland and I mean the city of Salzburg, regarding the private actors, especially the gastronomy and the restaurant, you realize that there are more and more cafes spreading ecological awareness through what you can consume. You find more and more vegetarian and vegan options, or local food restaurants that provide people with local food. So vegetarian and vegan options are extremely important, especially as Austrian gastronomy, a bit like German, is extremely meat-orientated, based on such things as Wiener Schnitzel, which is chicken or pork, sausages, etc., etc. Nowadays, like every restaurant provides, or almost every restaurant provides, a vegetarian or vegan option, and some are fully vegan as well. Even though I would not say that Austrians in general are really committed to veganism or vegetarianism yet. But yeah, it's more and more Austrians are committed to it. To continue with food or consumption, you realize that people are really are more and more aware, and they ask for an offer that is more sustainable. Supermarkets in general, like from Penny, which is really low cost, from Billa, which is more expensive, tend to make effort to be more sustainable. You find non-GMO and local alternatives in all supermarkets. You found really good local and sustainable products in all supermarkets. The use of plastic bags and paper bags is highly encouraged, and many Austrian people in Strasbourg and around are going often to markets throughout the city, which are more sustainable and offers only or almost only local products. The main one in Strasbourg is labeled Green Market, so it's called Grüne Markt in German, and provides goods from the region, from around, or even from the city of Strasbourg with a sustainable product. So we see that there is a high demand from the population to have products that are better for the planet and for the environment, and also probably for their health. Now, more about what the city of Strasbourg, so the public actors, are doing in the city of Strasbourg. There are many effective sustainable recycling practices. So yeah, Austrian people have been for quite a long time aware of these issues to protect their nature, and so the recycling practices are done by everyone in the city. And to me, they seem more effective than in France, but that's just my point of view. There's also such things as a Strasbourg Green Events label that who can apply all the events that are happening throughout the city can apply to this label. And it shows that they are friendly, ecological friendly event in Strasbourg, and it's also in the surrounding area. For example, such things as Christmas markets and fair can be labeled Strasbourg Green event, and it's quite important as Christmas markets brings a lot of tourism and could lead to a big threat toward the environment, such as the ski. And so yeah, the amount of green areas in the city and surrounding has grown exponentially. And in Strasbourg, it's quite impressive to see how the nature has a big place right inside the city. You can see it through two small mountains that are right in the city, with huge parks, big forests, and all around, nature is always extremely close. And also green means of transportation are highly encouraged in Strasbourg and industry in general. So there is a card, a ticket, that that can be used to take any public transportation, either throughout one region or throughout the whole country. It's a measure that has been created by the Austrian government to encourage people to take public transportation and to forget about their cars. Well, of course, a lot of people are still taking their car because it's more convenient and public transportation doesn't take you everywhere. But more and more people are taking transportation like the train, for example. And the city is also really bike friendly and walkable, even though more effort could be done on the bike side.
Okay, so we're going to talk about the similarities and differences that we kind of discussed when we worked and collaborated on this this presentation. So some of the similarities that we noticed was that there were two similarities that we noticed between all the cities that we represented. So within each of our municipalities, the municipalities incentivized people to make sure that they were playing a part in reducing waste and consumption. So whether it was a very large city, such as Ronak city, or whether it was a very small city, such as 100%, all cities, regardless of size, they wanted to make sure that their local governments wanted to make sure that more was being done to make sure that their inhabitants were essentially making sure that they were reducing their own waste, that they were trying to that they were acknowledging and realizing that, okay, maybe it is really important to do something in order to work towards fighting global warming. So it was really important for all local governments, regardless of size, to make sure that their inhabitants were taking a part in making sure that they were fighting against this cause, fighting against this. Another thing was that another example of that was that small enterprises, they would find ways in which they could play a part and incentivize and make sure that they were being environmentally sustainable. And a way in which they were doing that was trying to come up with like a business model so that they were considering what they could do to reduce their carbon footprint and therefore fight against climate change. For differences, one of the things, because our cities are very different sizes, a lot of our communities would try to identify the areas in which they needed to improve on. So because all of the sizes of each of our cities is very different, some cities could have more focus on one area where they knew that they could attain those goals a lot easier because their communities were a lot smaller than, say, for example, a larger city. So what municipalities recognized was the fact that, okay, well, we want to make sure that inhabitants can actually follow and abide by these rules and make it not seem like it's a burden for them as well. So the municipalities try to acknowledge and recognize what areas that they know are what goals that they know that they can attain for all the inhabitants that live in and around the area that they maintain control over. And so again, and the size of each community impacts what action items may be attained. So that was basically, again, kind of going off of the idea that, okay, well, we need to understand and recognize what is just attainable for everyone, and doesn't seem like a burden when trying to practice sustainability. Okay, for perspective. So one of the things that we kind of discussed was that while each of us are in our own communities have very different methods to reach a common thread towards fighting climate change, we try to make sure that we emphasize attainability and maximization. So in other words, we want to make it so that it is convenient for all the people that are within our municipalities to take a part in fighting against climate change. And we want to make sure that we can maximize on this as well. So not only are we trying to make sure that it's attainable for everyone, but we want to make it so that it can also, we can do the most in order to fight against climate change. It is also important that communities, that it is also important to be aware that communities do tend to focus on the reward aspect of fighting climate change. So a lot of the times inhabitants will be like, okay, if I'm going to be fighting against climate change, what do I get in return for fighting against climate change? And so while it may seem like a very short-term, it may seem like a good thing in the sense that people are fighting against climate change, there's still that idea that I need to be rewarded in order to, I should receive an award in order to, by fighting against climate change. So we need to kind of change this mindset so that because it could unintentionally create additional issues for the environment rather than actually solving the ones that we were planning on intending to fix. So it's important to recognize that, you know, we shouldn't expect and anticipate a reward for fighting against climate change. We should make sure that we do our best to fight against the issues that we were intended to fix. And not have to think of the idea of getting a reward in return. So.
So to conclude, we explored different responses from our communities all around the world, from India to the US, and going through Europe, through Austria and France. We realized that the perception of this phenomena that is really complex as climate change is really different throughout the world, and the answers to it are really diverse as well. One of the biggest issues for today is, and for humanity, is to continue our development while prioritizing the environment, which is extremely difficult and extremely political as well. But what we could be sure about is that all the communities, they need to cooperate together, even though no one can have a direct and standard answer toward climate change. In order to face this threat, humanity has to stand together.